Hey folks, it's Brian O'Brien here from 106.3 FM, and if you're like me, you've been following what's happening with the Pineville Community Hospital, as many in the community already know it, or a Pineville Community Health Center. It's gone by 2 or 3 different names in the last couple of years, but right now I'm here with the CEO, Alan Coppock, and he is going to kind of give us an introduction to himself. He's also going to share with us the vision he has for the hospital now, how we can get things back on track, and where we go from here. So thank you for joining me, first of all.
Thanks, Brian.
I certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
You have been in this kind of field for how long?
Since 1998, I've been in the hospital world.
Okay. And has that encompassed everything from the smallest to the largest jobs?
Well, I've never had a largest job. Most of my jobs have been small to medium size.
Okay.
So in 1998, I was invited onto the leadership team at Baptist Health Corbin, and spent 6 years essentially leading the ancillary departments for Baptist Health in the Corbin market. That led me to realizing we needed a particular specialty type of hospital that we didn't have, but we needed, called a long-term acute care hospital. So in 2002, I started working with some other of our team members to develop one. It's called an LTAC, long-term acute care hospital. And this is the hospital type that Medicare designates for the patients who don't get better in 3 or 4 days. They need 3 or 4 weeks of acute level of care. And so this could be patients on a ventilator, patients that need to be weaned off the ventilator, patients who are maybe on dialysis, but their kidneys can restart. We just got to give them time, and we've got to give them the proper level of support. So we started that in 2004. In August of 2004, opened Oak Tree Hospital, rebranded it in 2013 to Continue Care Hospital. And we were so successful, we started 2 more just like ours in Corbin. We started one in Madisonville and one in Paducah. So all 3 Continue Care hospitals in Baptist facilities. So that's kind of where my hospital career is. But as a result of kind of being involved with the hospitals, I was involved in helping to found Grace Health, which is the FQHC, or Federally Qualified Health Center, that serves 6 counties. We have a clinic here in Bell County. I was the board chair for 6 years of Grace Health, and got to see it get off the ground and become really transformational, I think, for the clinical care that folks in our whole region have access to. Okay. So yeah, that's a little bit about my background.
Okay. Now you come into a situation that's, I guess most of the country is dealing with rural health care having issues, especially hospitals. Funding has changed. The way the government even sees these hospitals has changed.
Right.
And in this particular case, this has been a mess for a while. And then the city took over, tried to get a few bugs worked out. By now, most of the people know that there was an auction. Highest bidder changed from one thing to another, but where we are right now is First State Bank of the Southeast has taken control as the highest bidder. Now, once they were at that point, how did the invitation come to you to come on board here?
I think it's notable to say that without the city's involvement and Mayor Scott Maiden's leadership, that to get to the point in August that we were when the bank made the decisions they did, to kind of bridge the gap and provide this way forward for the hospital, then this wouldn't be happening. I just think it's amazing what the mayor did and the city did, and then kind of behind that what the bank, First State Bank, has done to figure out if there's a way that makes sense for this hospital to be here for a long time. So I've worked in the past with Kentucky Highlands Investment Corporation. Okay. I have now, since 2017, have my own healthcare consulting firm. The areas of focus are on helping rural hospitals and physicians navigate this new era of healthcare that we are finding ourselves in. So one of my friends at Kentucky Highlands had been involved with the bank through this entire saga, the bankruptcy process, the bidding process, the auction, and all of the things that had to do with. He gave me a call on Monday evening at 5 o'clock. I was leaving my office in Corbin. and I got a text message from my friend at Kentucky Highlands saying, would you be interested or willing to have a conversation with folks at the new owners of the Pineville Hospital? And I said, sure. And I had heard what you'd heard. I'd heard that it was an out-of-state company that had bid a certain amount, and I just assumed they had it. And I said, so my question back was, do they know anything about Kentucky? Because that's pretty important to me.
Right.
Do they know something about Kentucky? And secondly, do they know anything about southeastern Kentucky? Because, we don't all, walk the same way or talk the same way.
Exactly.
And so it was important to me that this be somebody that had some knowledge of our people and the folks that I love. And
this was still the previous high bidder, is that correct?
And in my mind, it was.
Oh, okay.
So then we were texting, and he wrote back. He said, no. They know all about Kentucky. They know all about southeastern Kentucky. And I thought, okay, well, how if they're from out of state? I mean, not just next door state, like California state.
Right.
So
right.
How do they know anything about Kentucky? And he said, well, actually, the bidder that's going to end up owning the hospital is a local bank. And I don't know. I said I would love to have a conversation. We had a call that night, and I just grew to truly appreciate these fine people at the bank who really, there's no reason for them to do this. I hope everybody understands. No good reason. It's outside of their business wheelhouse. Hospital management is a very complicated and complex business model. And so they said to me, Alan, we need somebody who knows this space and knows this business and cares about Kentucky to help us. And I thought, well, I'm 3 out of 3. And so it just made a ton of sense. And on the 13th, the morning of the 13th, I came right out to the parking lot next this way, so across from the ER entrance, parked and met them, and we began that morning at about 6:55 a.m. talking about how we were going to turn this hospital around and give it back to the community.
Now, a lot of folks have heard this kind of talk before, and I would imagine that you have probably been told some background of previous. Now, we're not going to go into too much of that because it was very messy. Yeah. There's no guarantees in life. We understand that.
Right.
I don't think anybody in this community is wanting a guarantee because it's just something that is so unknown.
Right.
With financial institutions going belly up from time to time, the ever-changing hospital scene in and of itself tends to be different from day to day.
Sure.
So what makes what you bring to the table different than what was here before, other than the fact that before employees were not getting paid, insurance was not there for the employees, Medicare, Medicaid, there's hoops to get through, I get that. But what do you feel puts you in the perfect scenario to be where you are right now, and I don't think a lot of people understand that to get this back to its heyday would be a miracle, but to get it back to operational status, to make it acute care, is still something feasible. So what do you bring to the table that you think would be different?
Well, I'm passionate about doing it, number one. So I have a podcast I started 2 years ago when I started my company called Caring for Healthcare. So people can look on my website at adminologybay.com and find my podcast episodes and my blog, or they can go to iTunes and download episodes of the Caring for Healthcare podcast. But I talk about this on my podcast, the devastation that happens when a community like Pineville loses its hospital. And there's 3 examples in Georgia that we can look at from the last 4 years where they lost 3 out of rural areas, 3 communities lost their hospital. And what they lose is far more than 150 or 200 jobs. What they lose is far more than the ability to treat someone in an emergency room setting in your own town. They lose an economic base that you can't recover from. They lose the ability to attract new investment, new factories, new jobs, because I can't imagine the scenario where someone would come and put $10, $20, $30, $50 million into a community, into a new factory, create new jobs, when the community just lost its hospital. It just doesn't happen.
Okay.
So what happened in those 3 Georgia communities were, there's whole articles in some of the healthcare publications that you can follow. Becker's Healthcare Review is one example of where you can see, and they chronicle what happened in those communities. And the retail establishments die out or dry up. Parking lots become grass covered because there's just no traffic now, and so that becomes a useless area that used to be a bustling parking area. It's just a travesty. In one situation, they said the last grocery store was going out of business. I had a sign in the window when they came.
Wow.
So it's devastating to a community, and I don't want to see it happen in Kentucky because I know this. I know there are people on particularly in a radius, let's say, of 10 miles from Pineville, and in some cases further. I met some people from Clay County in our emergency room just a week and a half ago, and I got to sit down and talk with folks from Clay County, and I got to wonder now. I wonder how many other patients are finding our emergency room as a place that they want to be cared for. And I asked them, so how'd you happen to get here? They said, well, this is where my mom always would come to the hospital. She'd come to the doctor right here in Pineville. So that's where I want to go. I'm just so gratified to be able to meet folks. So why am I suited for this? I think it's because it's where I'm passionate. I want our rural communities to be able to find a way to keep their hospitals. Now, they may have to be repurposed. Sure. They may not look like they've always looked.
Sure.
But goodness gracious, we can find a way, I believe, to make them sustainable, find a model that works. So there's some things I'm really excited about that I can give you a high-level introduction to. Maybe what Pineville could do in this community that for this hospital setting that might make some sense and maybe give people an idea of where our thoughts are. First, there's some wonderful healthcare organizations around us. So we know about ARH, we know about Baptist Health, we know about CHI St. Joseph,
yes.
We know about Pikeville. We have some great training programs as well in our area. So we have LMU and the DeBus College of Osteopathic Medicine, DCOM is what it's called. Got to spend time there last week, and then they came over and visited the hospital here, and we toured.
Okay.
We have Southeast Kentucky Community and Technical College, just an amazing resource. We have University of Cumberland's, my alma mater, my undergrad alma mater is University of the Cumberland's, has a wonderful PA and nursing programs, both. I think LMU has the largest PA program in the country by the number of graduates per year. Did you know that?
Yes.
Well, yes. I had not heard that. That was new for me, and I loved it. So the second thing they told me was within 2 years, they believe they're going to be graduating 500 new docs every year. I don't know of a school that big in the country. Now, there may be another one bigger, but there's not many. That is incredible.
Yes.
So I thought, well, if we're going to make something special with this hospital, it has to incorporate a relationship, a partnership with these amazing training programs. And why wouldn't it make sense for the hospital, as we rebirth it and repurpose it, why wouldn't it make sense to have a really direct focus on empowering training programs they're going to be turning out our future physicians, nurses, therapists? It makes sense to me. Okay. So those are some things that I believe are in our future.
Okay. So you've gone over a little bit of your background. You've talked about the passion that you have for the state of Kentucky, and now, I mean, you're very close to Corbin as it is. Yeah. You're just a hop, skip, and a jump from home, I would imagine.
Right.
And there are some kind of down to brass tacks questions I do have for you. You know, the hospital itself is accepting patients again. In fact, there's been a couple that have talked to us, and there was one woman I spoke to just recently. She said, my daughter was the first patient they've had in a while. Right. And it took me just a second to realize that she didn't have Medicare, she had private care insurance. So with that said, that is a bit of a hurdle right now. I know that the OIG has given you some inclination that they may be coming back in, and maybe they have, and that's where we go with this. But do you feel like that they're going to be getting back on scene soon, and the itinerary that they had for going down their checklist, do you think it's going to be checked off to the affirmative, or have they given you any direction?
So let me give you a really huge news update. Okay. You're going to be the first one, I guess, that's heard this publicly. But, so when my second day here, I went to see the OIG in London and met with the supervisor of the survey teams just to understand kind of the history of where the organization had been with regard to the oversight of the OIG. To answer your question, so everybody knows, the OIG can come into any hospital at any time for any reason.
Yes.
Period. So that's just how I see it. That's how I view life. So when I'm in the hospital world, and particularly when I have a leadership role in a hospital, I just want to always know that can happen, and it's not going to rock my world if it does happen, because it can happen every day.
Okay.
So just know that. But I went to see him, and I said, I just would like to understand the history. And I had a wonderful discussion, but came away thinking, this is probably going to be a 6 to 8 week minimum process that we will need to go through. 6 to 8 weeks. Number one, I would want to have a mock survey, so I engage, basically hire a survey team to come in as if they were OIG, and then just help us, with everything that they find that we're short, and then help us close the gap, essentially. So that was the path I came away from that meeting with. That's probably the prudent thing for me to do. So I reached out to my first attempt to have the mock survey scheduled to the CIHQs, the Center for the Improvement of Healthcare Quality. Okay. They're based in Texas. I used them in Corbin. They were my accrediting body in Corbin. And I said, the CEO's name is Rick Curtis. And I said, Rick, would you be interested in a mock survey engagement in Kentucky? And he said, well, tell me the story. And I said, well, here's kind of the story. I gave him some of the background. He said, Alan, I don't think you need a mock survey. I think you need accreditation. You need to have that hospital on the path toward accreditation. And I'm going to tell you, I am so glad that he said that.
Do you feel like that's a level above where you
It's
believe
absolutely
it to
a level
be?
above.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So accreditation, so everyone knows, there are 4 deemed status accrediting organizations in America. AOs, they're called, accrediting organizations. There are 4. The one that most everyone has heard of is Joint Commission. And so they're the elephant in the room. They're the one with the majority of market share. The newest one is CIHQ, the Center for Improvement of Healthcare Quality. And so he said, well, he said, I'm sure you're in a hurry. I said, yeah, we're kind of in a big hurry. And I said, I'm afraid it's going to be 6 to 8 weeks if we go down the road I was going down. If you've got maybe a better pathway for us. And he said, well, it's not going to be easy. I said, I know that. I know it's not going to be easy. He said, we're going to expect a lot. I said, I know that. But we want to get ready for you. And he said, well, I can't tell you when we would be able to come, but I can tell you I want to see if I can help and if we can help.
Okay.
So they showed up on the 26th. So that was literally 2 weeks from the day I got here. The survey team was here on the 26th of August. They were here for 2 days. We went through that process, and there's a great story I want to tell you because it told me that Pineville was the place that I could really enjoy serving. So the second day of the survey, he went to the surgery suite. He wanted to see it. He said, Alan, I don't really have to look at it because you're not doing cases in there. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to see it. I wanted to see, would I be confident having my loved one, receive a surgery here? And he said, so I got there and I had to bring somebody with me because it's locked and, we keep it secure. So I'd had somebody let me in. And they went to open the door, and the door swung open, and all the lights were on. And he thought, I thought that was odd. And I poked my head in the door, and sitting in the nurses' area were 3 young ladies who were fully dressed in scrubs with their masks hanging from their neck. And he said, I looked at him and I said, I thought you all were not doing surgeries and hadn't been for a while. And they said, well, we haven't. And he said, so what do you do when you're not doing surgeries? What do you do here? And they said, well, we've been laid off. But we heard that you were coming today.
Okay. So
we wanted to be here because we didn't want anybody to answer the questions wrong, because this is our home.
Understood.
And I'll tell you, Brian, that had a major impact on me, and to know that there's that level of dedication from this community, that this hospital make it, this hospital have a way forward. And I can't think of anything I want to spend the next months or even years doing but being able to find that path.
Do you see yourself here for the long term? Now, granted, some CEOs can be absentee CEOs, but do you see yourself here for the long term to at least get the hospital back to a functioning hospital that is providing the care that it had in the past?
Right.
Maybe not to the degree of having 300 or 400 employees, because in today's financial climate that might not be feasible.
Right.
But do you see yourself being here heading this thing in more than a temporary manner? Because in the eyes of some of the folks in the community, it has really felt like it's been a temporary thing. This person is going to take care of this for a while. They'll make these promises, and then we won't see them again.
Right.
Where do you see Alan in just a year from now with this hospital?
I don't know the future. I can tell you this fits me well. This task in 2004 when we started the LTAC in Corbin, I did not think I was the right guy to do it. I thought there were 4 other people on the leadership team that were much more qualified and experienced to do that than I was. But they didn't want to do it.
Understood.
They didn't want to undertake it. It was hard. And they had to leave the Baptist Health brand and start something new. They literally had to cut their ties from an employment standpoint with Baptist and go to this new, brand new startup brand. And they just didn't want to do it.
Sure.
And I thought, well, it's important. Somebody needs to do it. And so I got the opportunity. That was my first CEO job, and it was from starting something that nobody else wanted to do. And here, that went very well. It was 13 years for me. I'm not a job hopper. I'm just not. So I don't know what the future is, but I can tell you the concept fits me well. It was something that needed to be done. That anybody who looks can say, "Oh my heavens, Pineville, the hospital in Pineville needs some strong, stable leadership." And I didn't see, that there was going to be lots of people jumping out of the healthcare leadership train to stop in here and really help this place. So why not me? Why not me lend what I've learned and the experience that we've had? And boy, wouldn't it be cool if 2 years from now we could look back on this and say, wow, we got our hospital back. And we got it back because, people stopped, serving themselves and started serving the community. And so I don't know. I know this. If at some point it does make it is clear that I need to go on another path, it'll be my last duty that I see to find an awesome leader, and I want to give them an organization that's strong and stable before I step out. Okay.
So for the folks that are here, and you talked about the loyalty of the folks that are still employed here, are they getting paid on a regular basis? And is there insurance in force as of this interview?
Yes, they're getting paid. So we have cut back.
Understand.
The organization was down to a bare minimum, and we brought a few people back. As a matter of fact, this morning I had a young man in my office who was one of the reasons we were successful in our survey last week, because his wife was one of my nurses in Corbin, and we had rock star nurses in Corbin, just so you know. And there's probably a half a dozen of them that want to come here and work if when we start to turn the lights back on and bring services back. So we want all of any of the staff that lost their position, we want them to have a chance to qualify to come back. And it's not a carte blanche anything, because our expectation is very high. So when you mentioned years ago they had 300 employees, maybe we'll never get back to that. I don't think we will, but we may have 180 to 200, but they're going to do all the work that the 300 used to do. So we're just going to expect more. And so we're going to, when we bring people back maybe that have lost their position, that's the first question I'm going to ask them. Are you okay with having to work harder? We don't slack here. We're not going to be average. Matter of fact, we don't tolerate average. That's how we became a high-performing team in Corbin. And so I had this young man in my office, and we were we're talking to him about coming back full time, because he was a game changer for us. The guy he just didn't stop from the time. So my third day back, his wife reached out to me on Facebook. She said, "Hey, what would you think about my husband? Do you need him? There's nobody that knows the building better than he does." I said, "We need somebody that knows the building." So he showed up the next day, and he had another job. He had to tell them that he had to make arrangements for, because we needed him, and somehow they put up with that. I don't know how they put up with that, honestly, but I'm so grateful that they did. So this morning we talked about him coming back full time. My first conversation about somebody coming back full time was that one this morning. It's pretty exciting. So my first payroll day was, I got here on the 13th. The first payroll day, I think, was the 16th, Friday the 16th. I think that's right. And so I asked, so how are we doing payroll? Because the way hospital payroll works, it's usually get paid on Friday for the week that ended, or the 2 weeks that ended the previous Saturday. So there's like a five-day delay. oh, well, we're going to release checks at noon. I said, checks? Yeah, checks. You know, I said, you don't have direct deposit? And, oh, we stopped doing that a year and a half ago or something. Right. We don't do direct deposit. I said, well, the first thing we're going to do is bring back direct deposit. I mean, that's just absurd. We make people come here to the hospital and pick up a check, maybe on a day they're not even scheduled to work. Sure. But they have to come here and pick up the check and then fight to get to the drive-through window at the bank to see if it'll be cashed. I just think that's absurd. So for us to restore that relationship, it begins with our staff. And so the next payroll that comes out, not this Friday, but next Friday, is going to be the first direct deposit payroll that they've had in a year and a half, I think.
The station isn't too terribly far from the bank, and there were times that employees were trying to beat one another to get to the bank, and I'm sure you've heard the stories. And there was one moment where you knew there was such desperation. They're about a block and a half from where we are, and the cars were wrapped all the way around the block down to the station just to see if they could get there, and they say, is there money in the account? And halfway through, of course, what little funds that the previous folks had put in were gone. Right. So I think direct deposit is that's a very promising sign. Yeah. That's a very promising sign.
Well, it's critical. It was absolutely critical. So that all begins this cycle. We're in the pay cycle now that will be direct deposited, the first one in more than a year, I think.
What's the biggest hurdle that you as a CEO are facing, and then what's the biggest hurdle as a hospital that this facility is facing?
Well, so the biggest hurdle we had, from the day one, we came in on the 13th, and the team, said, well, we had a recent OIG survey, and we're expecting results back any day. And I said, well, good. How did it go? I said, well, we think it went okay, but there's some things we got to work on. We know. So that was kind of the response. That afternoon, the afternoon of the 13th, we got the denial letter. Essentially we failed the survey, or the team failed the survey. So we were back to the drawing board, which was what took us to the accreditation deal. And so we got the accreditation. That was the biggest hurdle. If we did not get that accreditation, we just had to. We had to go that route. So now we are accredited as of September 4th, last Wednesday. Okay. The hospital is fully accredited by CIHQ.
Now, let me interrupt you for 1 second. Do you mentioned the four other organizations, do they all have the same clout? I mean, do they all have the same?
Well, I mean, it's hard to know that for sure. They all have the equal footing with Congress and with CMS. Okay. Right. So they're all deemed status accrediting organizations. Joint Commission is the one that's got probably 70% of the market.
Understood.
So out of 4,500 hospitals, roughly 70% of them are Joint Commission accredited. Okay. The other three have the remaining 30, and I'm making up numbers, so I probably shouldn't do that, but that gives you an idea. Yeah, Joint Commission clearly the biggest. Okay. Do they all have the same clout? They all have the same requirements that CMS puts out, and they all have the same oversight. If CMS felt like that we may have faked it, and that they could come in and validate. They would absolutely be able to come in and validate the survey. But at that point, it's more of the survey of the surveyors.
Understand? Okay.
Than survey the hospital, and that can still happen. It can happen anytime. The other time we see OIG is when they're coming to investigate a complaint. So if your listeners care to know this, anytime you have a healthcare service and something doesn't go right, and you don't feel like you got the correct response from the caregiver, whatever that is, you're free and encouraged to make a complaint, and then that complaint will be investigated. And it happens 100% of the time. And it might take them a month to get to investigate, and the person may not always hear what the resolution was, but it will be investigated. That's happened. We'd have about one a year that we'd have a complaint at our hospital in Corbin, and that's when you generally see the OIG. But when you have a accrediting organization, OIG doesn't have to oversee you directly. They take the word of the accrediting organization that the organization is safe, is prepared to care for patients, and is competent. And unless there's an issue, unless there's a complaint, and then they come in and check out the complaint. Okay.
We only have a few more questions. One of the situations that was facing the hospital was an identity. And first of all, are you going to keep it Pineville Community Hospital, Pineville Community Healthcare?
I don't think so. Is it going to
remain static?
I don't think so. I mentioned earlier, there are these wonderful organizations around us. I would love to see adopting one of those brands, either by a direct affiliation on a clinical level. So whether we bring one of the fine organizations, I know Baptist has a focus on behavioral health issues, and I love that space because it is huge need for our area. We have addiction recovery services that we could offer here. We have geriatric psych. We actually have a unit they built upstairs with 12 beds in it that is remarkable, and Baptist does not have that line of service, but they want it.
Okay.
And so maybe to have their involvement in helping us really do that service well makes complete sense to me. So do I see the brand staying the same? No, I don't. I don't know what form it will take. If it comes to us saying, let's decide ourselves among our team, then believe me, we're going to get some focus group involvement. We're going to get some input from the community. How important is it for the new brand to have the name of the city in it, Pineville? Is that important? Or is it not important? But we need to hear from the community to be able to determine that. And then what would the brand look like or feel like? My hope is there's a bridge, the bridge that crosses the road out here, 25E, to the parking lot on the other side. Everyone knows this bridge because they go under it every time they come through Pineville. Right. But my goal within a few weeks is to have banners hanging off on both sides of that begin to talk through the rebranding. So be looking for that. We have a company here right now. I spent a lot of the day today with a company from North Carolina who could help us really make our laboratory business and our pharmacy business and our radiology business, those ancillary support departments, really make them effective for the hospital going forward. So we're putting the pieces in place that are going to build what I hope will be a very solid, stable footing that we can really serve the community well.
One of the other things that's been on the minds of a lot of folks here is third-party billing. Now, you kind of touched on it just for a second there, but are you going to keep that in-house? That was a major issue. There was a third-party billing that they were hitting people, I kid you not, they were hitting people with checks or bills for like $4, $5 to the tune of 80 and 90 of them at one time. Do you see this hospital having to resort to that?
I detest that.
Okay.
So if we did that, we'd be doing something I detest.
Okay.
I literally detest that. Let me tell you what I love. I love the concept of hospitals presenting their pricing strategies in as transparent a way as possible right on their website and being available to have for people if they come into the building and ask for it. What would it cost for me to have this procedure? What would it cost for me to have be able to say this is essentially our it's the idea of being transparent in your pricing and even understanding their payer situation. So if they have an insurance company, what's likely the relationship between that patient and their payer regarding copays, deductibles, so that we can back out of that what we believe their out-of-pocket expense or their out-of-pocket obligation will be. And to make it so I'm going to be bold here. I would love Pineville to be the first hospital in this entire region that becomes as fully transparent from a pricing standpoint right on our website. That's exactly the opposite of third-party billing.
It is.
That's what I want to do.
Okay.
Now, it's not going to be easy to get there, but
sure. I've
got some really good people helping me through that conversation. Wouldn't it be cool if folks could say, what does it cost to have a drug screen? What's going to be my out-of-pocket? And be able to call it up on our website right there. Oh, there it is. And that's given the fact that I have this insurance or that insurance.
Right.
Be remarkable. Yeah.
That sounds like a good step as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're just about to wrap up. One of the hurdles that Medicare and Medicaid has was the lack of a proper governing body. That was one of their big things. There's little things that have been addressed. I know that the city and the mayor had crews up here really working hard to work on the physical capability of the hospital and a lot of facility maintenance issues. But the governing body was a big deal. Do you think with you at the helm and those back in administration, that governing body is now in place to at least get past that point?
Right. Well, that's a work in process, but it is going. It's going well. So stay tuned. Give us a couple weeks, and we'll have some more details on where we stand with the governing body. No doubt, the governing body of any 501c3 hospital is it's critical for the connection to the community. It's critical for the oversight and accountability. back when I would train my team on how, why we have a board in Corbin. So that was a big deal because we were brand new. We started that hospital.
Sure.
So when we spun our team up, I had to actually recruit the board. Well, how do you do that? And then they become your boss. You're essentially recruiting your boss.
Yeah.
So I tried to help my team understand the role of the board is, number one, to be ultimately accountable to the community for the performance of the organization, right?
Okay.
But number two, to set the mission, vision, and values of the organization so that me, the leader, or the leadership team, has clear understanding what the board's expectation that we're going to accomplish for this community. That's our mission. Our vision is how, basically how far are we going to go? How good do we want to be? That's the vision. Okay. Do we want to lead the state? Do we want to lead the county? Do we want to lead the region? Do we want to lead, the entire eastern seaboard?
Sure.
That's the vision. The values are, what are we going to carry along with us? And let me just say something about values because it's so important, and it was what I believe was one of the missing components in the last couple of years. So I'm the regent for the American College of Healthcare Executives for Kentucky. Last year I was elected by all of Kentucky's healthcare leaders to be the Kentucky regent for ACHE. That's our professional organization.
Okay.
The ACHE has developed a code of ethics. And the code of ethics are the standards by which we are expected, if we're a leader, if we have the privilege of leading in any capacity, any healthcare system or any healthcare organization in the country, we should be paying attention to that code of ethics. It's how you govern yourself. And I'm sorry to say this, but I think that was missing in the prior iteration of leadership. And it was desperately missing. It's not going to be missing here. That code of ethics provides our guardrails so that we stay on the track, that we don't get off, and that we do things the right way, and we treat people well. I'll be happy to pull the document. You can post it on your website if you like. I mean, it's an amazing.
Great, yeah, that'd be fantastic.
It's an amazing document, and if people follow that, then what happened the last couple of years here would never have happened, which it wouldn't have.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've been here with Mr. Alan Coppock, and he is a CEO. See it right
Interim.
here.
Interim
interim.
CEO.
Oh,
Yes.
interim
Yes.
CEO. Okay.
Yeah.
Why is it interim? Because you're still in the process of rebuilding.
Right. So the arrangement is between the bank and my healthcare consulting firm.
Okay.
It's a contracted relationship to provide transition services up to and including interim CEO.
Understood.
And it's as simple as that. It's just what it is currently. So.
Okay. All right. Well, this is one of those situations, folks, that Pineville has a tradition in this particular hospital. It is such a big part of the community. We know you followed this for many years, previous administration, when the city took over, now with First State Bank of the Southeast taking over. There's a lot of times that things are said and not followed through with. Let's give the gentleman a chance to get things back on track, get things in a positive light, and I think it's been doing that. I really do. I believe that it's been doing that the last few months especially, but we hope to continue to follow this path to more light at the end of the tunnel. And as Alan has said, he was able to bring back, or he's hoping to bring back, several folks that have been with the hospital before, have a great deal of experience with the hospital here, and they just want to be a part of what they're doing here at Pineville Community Hospital /healthcare / something else could be on the horizon. I'm Brian for 106.3 FM. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
You too.